Hey everyone, it's Wolfgang. I wanted to talk about surviving the tariffs and a couple of examples of companies that are doing it right and doing it wrong. So, as an example, we've all heard that Apple is under scrutiny. They're moving their manufacturing out of China, which is good, but they're not moving it to the US. And they're under scrutiny for relocating their manufacturing to India. So they are going to have tariffs imposed on their products for not creating jobs in the US. The whole issue with the tariffs is to create jobs, to revive the jobs base in the US, to create more jobs for US citizens. Maybe we'll never get back to the kind of manufacturing jobs base we had in the past, but the tariffs are an attempt to stop the hollowing out of our employment opportunities in the US. So Apple is moving manufacturing out of China, but not back to the US, at least not yet. They're under scrutiny. They're going to be subject to tariffs for importing stuff not made in the US. They're not onshoring manufacturing. 25% tariff has been announced on Apple. Walmart is under scrutiny for passing on price hikes to US customers. So they're buying products from countries that have unfair trade practices, and they are passing on the higher prices of tariffs to US customers. So they're being stubborn. We all know that a lot of products at Walmart are from China. China is an unfair trading partner. And Mattel, same story. They're under pressure for passing on higher prices to US customers. So it's sort of like a slap in the face. Not only are these companies no longer creating jobs for US for their own customers, for US citizens, not only are they not creating US jobs anymore, but they're passing on higher prices just for the privilege of not providing jobs for their own customers. All these companies could create jobs for US citizens if they wanted to. And so they're all under pressure for failing to do that, for charging higher prices because they refuse to reshore manufacturing. So very bad customer relations. A lot of people are going to not buy from these companies. Not everyone, but a lot of people will say, okay, if you're not going to play ball and at least help the U.S., chip in and help U.S. citizens have better job options, then we're not going to buy from you. And a lot of people will not buy because of the higher prices. They're going to say, okay, you raised prices, so I'm not gonna pay that. So it's bad customer relations. What they should do is take the hint from the U.S. government, onshore the manufacturing, create jobs for U.S. citizens, and then there would be no tariffs. They would have no reason to increase their prices because there are no tariffs on goods made in the U.S. So this is a tariff survival story. Home Depot is not raising prices. They're not passing on higher prices due to tariffs, and here's why. And any company could have done this. And by the way, the 145% tariff on China products is still looming. It's still hanging over China's head. It has temporarily been reduced to 30%, but it will be imposed unless trade negotiations work things out. Home Depot's not affected, though, either way. They changed their supply chain. So Home Depot made a conscious decision a few years ago to stop doing business with countries that have unfair trading practices. And they saw the writing on the wall. All these companies could have done the same thing. Apple, Walmart, Mattel, and other companies, they could have done the same thing Home Depot started doing in 2016, which is to see the light at the end of the tunnel, and that is the U.S. government is starting to get concerned about the hollowing out of the job base in the United States for a lot of reasons. Social unrest is one reason. The ability to collect taxes is another reason. You cannot collect taxes from people who don't have jobs. And the motive to move manufacturing offshore to offer lower prices to U.S. consumers doesn't matter if the U.S. consumers don't have a job. So that story never made sense anyways. It only made sense for the countries with unfair trading practices. So Home Depot learned in the 2016-2020 period the tariffs that the current government, the government we have now was also present in 2016 to 2020, and the tariffs issue came up then too. And Home Depot learned what to do. They made their supply chain different. They altered where they're sourcing their goods. They stopped relying so much on countries that have unfair trading practices. The leadership at Home Depot said the following: We recognize the U.S. government is concerned about the hollowing out of the jobs base in the United States, and they have begun to penalize countries with unfair trading practices using tariffs. because this existed back in 2016 through 2020, and President Biden kept a lot of those same tariff policies, by the way. And Home Depot decided, because our government in the U.S. is going to begin penalizing unfair trading practices, we are going to wean ourselves off of getting products from those countries. We will we will move our supply chains to countries that trade more fairly, because they will be less subjected to U.S. tariffs that are being imposed. So Home Depot figured this out last time around, 2016 to 2020, and they began weaning themselves off the Home Depot product mix. They started weaning themselves off from products sourced from countries with unfair trading practices, in particular China. So Home Depot recognized slave labor and artificially cheap labor is not conducive to stability in the Home Depot business, because Home Depot recognized if they rely too much on countries with unfair trading practices, they might be forced to raise prices too, or it will hurt their business. And so they decided, we're going to avoid that by sourcing products from countries with more fair trade practices. So in the most recent quarter, MRQ, Home Depot reported an increase in sales. Now, if you think about that, the most recent quarter in 2025, think about the home market right now. I did a video on that recently, and the real estate market is pretty soft right now, and yet Home Depot showed a sales increase. That's pretty phenomenal considering the condition of the U.S. housing market. Home Depot reported an increase in sales, and a big reason is they didn't raise their prices. They have not raised prices. So this bad customer relations issue does not come up with Home Depot. They don't have to pass on tariffs to their customers. They don't have to increase their prices because they changed their supply chain. They figured this out back in 2016 and 2020. Okay, our government is fed up with unfair trade from these countries. We're going to start sourcing our products from elsewhere. Apple is only now making moves when they absolutely have to, and they're still kind of blowing it. They're still going to be subject to 25% tariffs because they did not relocate their manufacturing base back to the U.S. I don't know if everyone remembers, but the original manufacturer of Apple products was here in the U.S. In fact, there was Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak belonged to the Homebrew Computer Club in Cupertino. We used to live out there. We moved away from Silicon Valley, but we lived right there where Apple was created. And the Homebrew Computer Club and Apple products in the early days, everything was made in the U.S. And they found a market, they established themselves, they went public, they did quite well. So the outsourcing of the manufacturer is a mistake, especially when the U.S. government is beginning to penalize countries with unfair trade practices using tariffs. So Apple is going to suffer. They're going to have to either eat the tariff or lose sales, because people don't like this idea. Okay, you're not creating jobs for us here in the U.S. and you want to charge us higher prices. Forget it. It's bad customer relations. So Home Depot is avoiding all of that. They changed their supply chain. They're sourcing products mostly from countries with much more fair trade practices. Their sales have increased because they're not passing on tariffs. They don't have to. They're not increasing prices. Home Depot shows what is possible. So this is the Tariff Survival Guide. Home Depot figured it out a long time ago, several years ago. These companies could have done the same, but so they're going to find out slowly, kind of, I guess, the hard way, that the U.S. government is 100% committed to making sure the jobs base here in our country gives people job options, job opportunities, because it doesn't matter how cheap the products are if they're made offshore. If people do not have jobs, they can't afford to buy them, right? They can't afford to buy anything. So it's possible to sustain your business and not raise prices. Home Depot has proven that. So the takeaway for Walmart, for Apple, and for Mattel and other countries is to stop sourcing their products and having their manufacturing done in countries with unfair trading practices. And China is the big one. The unfair trading practices have come under scrutiny by the U.S. government, and the U.S. government is putting a stop to it, one way or the other. Home Depot has created a path through the woods. Here's how to survive the tariffs. Have a supply chain that is not relying on countries that have unfair trading practices. Change your supply chain, get your products from countries that have much more fair trading practices, or from U.S. manufacturers, because there are no tariffs if products are manufactured in the U.S. So that's how Home Depot solved this problem, and that's sort of the survival story for these companies too. They're going to have to change their ways, as stubborn as they seem to be. Walmart especially passing on higher prices, because the main selling point for Walmart is affordability. If they're going to be passing on higher prices simply because they do not want to source, they do not want to create U.S. jobs, they're going to pay a high price for that in public relations. That's a huge mistake. And Home Depot really has done a good job with this, really has shown what's possible. Because if you think about the variety of products in a Home Depot, it's a warehouse store. They're massive. If they can do it, these other companies can also. If you have any questions about this, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have if you post in the comments. And I really want to thank everyone for watching. Have a great holiday weekend.